Hello guys, we continue talking about emotional schemes. I remind you that emotional schemes are like beliefs, ideas we developed during our socialization about emotions and feelings, and they continue influencing our life in adult years as well. In the previous video, we talked about several different assumptions, beliefs we might have about emotions, and I made separate videos about each because I believe them to be maybe the most common ones. But today we're going to discuss all the remaining possible ideas and beliefs that can be about emotions. So, first of all, we discussed together validation, duration, control, shame and guilt, and acceptance. We discussed all this and also meaning. So, these are discussed. Now, let's continue. Um, Also, different ideas we might have about expressing our emotions. Like, for example, if you learned that the way to express your emotions is through shouting or through crying or through manipulating or through something other violent or not so good in your childhood, you might continue doing it in your adult years as well, like a habit. So instead of this, you should actually try new ways of expressing your emotions. And I have a separate playlist about communication skills. And these are exactly the strategies and the skills that you need to express your emotions, not violently, and make yourself understood by other people. So this is number one. Number two is our ideas how others should react to our emotions. Like if you grew up being, for example, in the center of attention of your parents, and when you felt upset or when you felt something else, they would instantly run towards you and pay you a lot of attention. You might unconsciously expect the same from others. So you might act kind of entitled in this way and expect others to assist in your emotional regulation. Also, if, for example, you, let's say, as a man, let's imagine you're a man and you are not used to expressing your other emotions but anger and discussing them and so on, you might expect your wife or partner to do all the talking, to do all the regulation, to do all the emotional labor. This is also like expectation that others will deal with your emotions. Another example may be that if you did not have your emotional needs met as a child, you might have this idea that other people cannot meet my needs. So I don't need to ask for emotional support from others. And you try to always be independent and to process your emotions only alone. And oftentimes this is the issue for avoidant attachment, because this idea that others cannot help me to process my emotions, so I need to process them on my own. What else? What else? So basically, analyze it, and please feel free to pause the video and think about it. In what ways you expect others to behave towards your emotions? Do you expect them to pay you a lot of attention, or do you expect them to shame you, or do you expect them to see you as weak and then attack you, or do you expect them to do emotional labor for you or something else? So pay attention to that, and also pay attention to how you um, express your emotions in relations to with other people. So feel free to pause and think about that and maybe note it down. um, Next one, what can be appearing, also this very simplified views of emotions, and not really being able to mentalize and understand more complex emotional states. And here it can also come just from your lack of practice. And normally, it's normal when we have many emotions at the same time, when we can see how our emotions change during even short amount of time. We can also see how they kind of are fluid and flexible. We can see different nuances in emotions. So this is when we have the vocabulary and when we are taught to pay attention to our emotions. But many people, they don't have that. Like, especially it's, I think, problem for men, because they were not taught to differentiate like subtle nuances in their emotions. So this simplified, overly simplified view of emotions can be also a problem. So pay attention, ask yourself if this is your case or not. Next one. Next one is indifference or not feeling anything, like apathy. Some people can have this. This is when you kind of either repressing your emotions, or you have been repressing them for a long time, or maybe you are generally like in temperament pretty calm as a person, and this combines with avoiding your emotions, so you feel like you don't feel anything. And this kind of mode of being, mode of functioning, can be also developed due to this emotional socialization. So you can ask yourself if this is your case. If you are kind of indifferent, insensitive, not very emotional person, and not maybe at all emotional, and oftentimes we find that in such cases you have emotions but you lost contact with them. And this can be really sad, because our emotions, they make our life more colorful, and they also make us see life in more varied way, even negative emotions, so-called negative emotions, because actually emotions are not black and white. Emotions are like different colors, and if you have a painting in many nuanced colors, it's going to look very pretty than if it's just black and white only. So if you find yourself that you don't have a lot of emotions, you almost never feel anything at all, it's likely that you do have them, but you lost this contact with them. So you might try to restore this contact, and you can do it by going to your body, asking yourself how you feel in your body. You can do it using art therapy, music, or other things to kind of project your emotions onto them. Well, I won't go here in detail, but you can also analyze it. So feel free to pause the video. Next one is normalizing our emotions. It's also can be caused like it also can be called as I feel same emotions as other people in similar circumstances. And if you think that you feel something and others never feel that way, you might feel very, very lonely, weird, you might feel like an outsider, and so on. And it makes the whole experience even more painful. However, if you feel like I have these emotions and others have similar emotions, then you feel understood, then you feel like your emotions are shared, and so on. So it's really, really important that oftentimes when we don't have understanding and normalization from our parents or family or society in our childhood, we develop this assumption that others cannot understand our emotions are weird, our emotions are strange, and so on. But these are just assumptions, they are not true. So instead, I encourage you to find communities where you can be understood. Like, for example, many people find relief when they find out they have ADHD or autism, and they realize that this is why I was feeling different, and then they can communicate with people who have similar issues, and then they feel understood, and then they feel relieved, and then they feel normal. Also, if you're going through some kind of loss or addiction or something, it's really helpful to go to these like group therapy, groups, support groups, and so on, because there as well you can see that others are also going through the same thing. And most importantly, if you have this idea that you're lonely, nobody understands you, you are like a weirdo, you are outsider, and others can never understand and love you, and your emotions are weird and your feelings are weird and nobody else feels in the same way, I promise you, it's more likely that you just grew up in invalidating household where your parents were not emotionally capable to deal with your emotions and even their own emotions. So they guilted and shamed you and made you feel not normal. But I promise you that all emotions are same throughout different people, and you can find people who understand your emotions, and most likely your emotions are normal. So no need to feel yourself as a weirdo, outsider, or some kind of, well, a loner or something like that. You can find communities that can understand you. So to begin, you just need to give yourself hope for this, that you are not alone and there are people who can understand your feelings. And then try to find them and try again and again and again until you do. Okay, next idea you can reflect on is rationality versus emotions. Rationality is wonderful, don't mistake me, but some people they like to contradict rationality and emotions, as if you can be either rational or emotional and these are opposite things. Well, in reality, rationality and emotions are not opposing things at all. You don't have to be rational. I mean, you don't have to be unemotional to be rational, and so on and so on. On the contrary, if you have close connection with your emotions, if you understand them very well, if you know how to deal with them, if you know how to regulate them, it's gonna help you to make more rational decisions and so on. And if you're trying to pretend like you are a rational person, like you don't have emotions and so on, then it's more likely that you're just fooling yourself, to be honest. That actually you are emotional, and these emotions can influence on the way you think and you don't even notice it. And we can oftentimes see this even in public figures who call themselves rational, but then uh, but then what they say is of full of just empty assumptions and not based on facts, but based on their own feelings or own sensations or own estimations, not like a scientific way of thinking. Okay, so oftentimes we see that so-called rational person is just someone who pretends like they don't have emotions while actually being controlled by those emotions. But because they pretend they are not emotional, they don't even recognize it. So it's much better to recognize that everybody is emotional. We are emotional beings. Everybody has emotions. Be able to see your emotions, be able to identify them, recognize them, understand them, validate them, accept them. And then when we have our emotional needs covered, then our logical mind can work at its best. If we don't have our emotional needs covered, it's gonna lead to different distortions in our logical thinking as well. So, no opposition between rational and emotional. We need ability to regulate our emotions, understand our emotions, accept our emotions, and so on, in order to be rational. Otherwise, impossible. Next one is this next idea that you can analyze is a habit of thinking your feelings. I was mentioning this in a couple of previous videos, this idea that we often resort to this. Like, for example, someone sharing their emotions with you, and you want to immediately say them and help them, and you start thinking how to do it, and actually they didn't need it. They just needed validation, empathy, understanding, and not your analysis. Same can happen with us if we have, let's say, anxiety, and instead of just feeling it, we're thinking about it again and again, again and again, again and again, again and again, again and again. And all this just makes us more anxious. And this is how rumination works. It can also be called pseudo-mentalization, talking from like a psychological perspective. But you don't need to know these fancy words. What you need to know is that if you are feeling something, just feel it. Give yourself space, give yourself time if you can, and feel it. Don't try to think about anything. And once you feel calmer, more stable, then you can think. And when you are thinking, make sure to use our basic cognitive skills. It's a separate playlist to maintain your thinking clean and clear and not have tons of cognitive distortions in there that can make you feel bad again. So it's really important. Feel your feelings, think your thoughts in a clear manner using basic cognitive skills. Okay, next idea I want you to reflect about is fault finding or blaming. This oftentimes happens as a strategy to deal with our emotions. Like we cannot, like we got used to this from our family or childhood or society, that when I feel something, I'm starting to blame others. Like, for example, somebody criticized me and I feel upset about it, and I start blaming that this person is jealous of me, this person is just I don't know, a narcissist or something, like giving labels and blaming and so on and so on, instead of blaming somebody or kind of labeling somebody, or even yourself. Blaming yourself is also possible. Instead of blaming, do our productive coping strategies for feelings. I remind you, it's acceptance, it's validation, it's normalization, it's asking for emotional support from others, it's using our ABCD technique, cognitive restructuring, it's what else? Trying some new behavioral strategies, doing some kind of relaxation or stress resilience skills. All these are good ways to react to our emotions. Blaming and fault finding is not right, is not good. And oftentimes we can see that it's useful not only to accept our emotions, but also to accept our own like weaknesses and another person's weaknesses, that everybody can have these weaknesses, and instead of trying to fix it and make everything perfect, and even if it takes a lot of time, instead we can save our time, save our effort, and just accept it, that I have those issues, you have those issues, sometimes they appear, that's fine, we are living humans, we have some kind of personal history that can influence our emotions, that's fine, you can just accept them and understand them. Yes, what I was talking about. I'm sorry. Blaming and fault finding. So you don't need to blame yourself or find faults in yourself or blame others. You can just accept them and yourself. You can just accept your feelings and not pay so much, not try to be some kind of judge that I decide this is wrong, I decide this is right. Okay, next idea I want you to reflect about is urgency. How urgent are your emotions? Some people can have this idea that I need to urgently stop my emotion, or it will get out of control, or I will go insane, or I will make something horrible, or something else horrible will happen. So this idea that emotions need to be dealt with as urgently as possible oftentimes leads to like addictions, bad habits, and so on. So because if I feel that I have to deal with my emotion as urgently as possible, I don't have time to go and read about relaxation exercises or watch my channel. I have time to go and get an ice cream, and this way to deal with my emotion. So in reality, our emotions don't need to be dealt with urgently. Don't. They are not going to do anything horrible with us. We don't need to avoid them. We should not postpone dealing with our emotions for years, but if it's a matter of minutes, hours, sometimes even days, that's fine. We can focus on priorities and deal with our emotions a little bit later. And I recommend you having some kind of diary or some kind of application or note where you write down your emotions that you felt during a certain period, and you set yourself some time during your week when you look at those emotions and deal with them, for example, so that you are not worried you forget about them and so on. So there is no particular urgency to stop the emotion, whatever it takes. You can take your time and deal with it later, or sometimes you don't even have to deal with it. Sometimes you can just recognize this emotion, feel it, and accept it, and then it will go. And next one is this idea of changing, if our emotions can be changed or not. Like, some people believe that basically if they feel a certain way, they can only feel in that way and that it cannot be changed. In reality, emotions are very changing. Even the same sadness can present itself in many different tones, and we can, thinking about some things or listening to music or talking to someone, we can change this emotion. Like, for example, you started feeling sad, then you talked with someone about this sadness, you exchanged feelings, and you started feeling still a bit sad, but at the same time understood and loved and taken care of. You feel warm inside, and you feel kind of sad, but in a comfy way. So you see, emotions are changeable. They can be changed, depending on your actions, on your thoughts, and so on. They are not like a statue that is there and you cannot change it. It's kind of more like a plant. You can trim some places, you can, I don't know, make some form of this plant and so on. And the last one, no, almost the last one I want you to think about is emotional goals. Yes, we cannot completely control our emotions, and we cannot get rid of them or something like this, because emotions are like weather. But what we can do is we can set emotional goals, like goals to feel certain way more often or something like this, because our emotions are dependent on our thoughts and on our actions. So, for example, if you have a goal to feel contact and closeness and friendship and love and all those with other people, you can actually do things and think certain things that make you feel more of those things. Same, if you want to feel more joy, you can plan activities, and you can plan thoughts and different things to actually feel more joyful. So don't think of emotions as something that you cannot be deliberate about. Yes, in general, you cannot control them per se, you cannot control the emotions, but you can control what triggers them sometimes. You can control your behaviors, your actions, what you surround yourself with, who you surround yourself with, who you're talking to every day, what are you watching, what are you wearing, what are you eating, and so on and so on, how are you sleeping. All of these small activities, small actions, or big activities can influence your emotions. So it's advisable that you have some kind of emotional goals if you want to. And in the end, tomorrow, not tomorrow, in a week, you will see my last video in this section. Not last, two videos left. One about ambivalence of emotions or contradictory emotions, and second one about values that stand behind our life, emotions, and so on. Because after all, our goal is not to live a emotionless life or painless life or only good positive vibes life. It's not possible. So it's better to focus on the goal of living meaningful life, and life that is connected to our values, and life that makes us feel motivated, inspired, and worth living, yeah, and worth tolerating uncomfortable emotions for. So stay strong. I hope to see your thoughts about all this in the comments. It will be very interesting. And remember that the best way to thank me is to spread this video with your family, friends, people you know, and so on and so on, in your social networks as well. And also put a like, share it, what else? Write a comment and all that, because then YouTube will know that this video is interesting and hopefully share it with others. And I hope to see you soon in the next week. Bye bye.